remember from last week, we are starting this year anew with at least 1 week we're going to declare over our lives, we're going to speak it, And I want to say this really quick. Remember that when God created the heavens and the earth, what did He do? He spoke them into being. He didn't think them into being, although it was on His mind. It didn't come into being until He said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Amen. "Let there be earth," and there was earth, and so on and so forth. "Let us make man in our image," and so it was. And so in the likeness that, with the understanding, let me rephrase that, with the understanding that you and I are created in the likeness of the Creator who spoke this existence into being and called it good, let us also speak the declaration of our lives. And if you remember, or if you don't, it's fine, it's on the back of your bulletin. Let's say this together. You ready? Here we go. God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. Satan has done his best, but his best wasn't good enough. I'm still here. I'm still standing in faith on the promises of God. I know with God the best is yet to come. God will finish the good work He started in my life, for I know that every good and perfect gift comes from Him. I am a child of the living God through Jesus Christ my Lord. The enemy cannot snatch me out of His hand. No weapon formed against me shall be able to prosper. I will flourish. God is restoring the years the enemy has stolen. My ears are open, my eyes are open, my heart is attentive, my mind is alert. Speak, God, your servant is listening. Amen. Today I want to talk to you about talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. A recent article I read said that the phrase "talk is cheap" is actually a shortened version of at least 2 other commonly used American idioms. Quote, "Talk is cheap, but it takes money to buy whiskey." And quote, "Talk is cheap, but it takes money to buy a farm." The phrase means that it's easier for someone to say that he or she will do something than to actually do it. In its earlier incarnations, an example was provided to assist with internalizing that message. An article headlined in the Portsmouth Times, published on August 21st, 1958, carried the headline, quote, "United Nations, talk is cheap." The story was about another skirmish in the Middle East and reported in part that, quote, "Those who have criticized the United Nations for doing nothing but talk can be thankful there has been a place to talk, which is cheap, and much to be preferred over armed conflict, which is costly." Years earlier, on October 2nd, 1926, in the Gridley Herald and the Lyon County Reporter, just 2 of several newspapers who carried the same Pacific Telephone and Telegraph Company Bell System advertisement, the focus was on talk being cheap. It was a quirky yet effective advertisement with a quaint story that stated, quote, "Talk is cheap, but it takes money to buy a farm." Many a schoolyard argument of boyhood days has been ended with this homely bit of philosophy. For the American telephone user, talk is truly cheap, cheaper than anywhere else in the world. But it takes money to keep this telephone service cheap and to make it ever and ever cheaper. Bell was pushing their motto of "one policy, one system, universal service." What's interesting about this is that it implied that the phrase "talk is cheap, but it takes money to buy a farm" went back at least 1 generation to when the decision makers in the home and business Indeed, the LA Times printed an article in July 23rd, 1896, wherein a story reported talk is cheap, that it is that talk is cheap, but that it takes votes to elect the president. The Detroit Journal calls the platform adopted at the Chicago Convention, quote, a platform of cranks, by cranks, for cranks. The earlier date for publication of the phrase talk is cheap is found in the Chicago Daily Tribune on November 21st, 1891. Although no one can say on what date exactly Phineas Taylor Barnum said talk is cheap until you hire a lawyer, but it's believed it was some time after 1856 when the Jerome Clock Company of East Bridgeport in Connecticut, the company in which Burnham had invested heavily, declared bankruptcy. P.T. Burnham lost all the money he had invested into and loaned to the company, which was a sizable amount by then. For P.T. Barnum, this began 4 very long and expensive years of litigation and public humiliation. We use the cliche, talk is cheap, and that's because it is. Some cliches are true. This is one of them. In the New King James Version, Proverbs 14:23 says, in all labor there is profit, but idle chatter leads only to poverty. The New Living Translation states the same by saying it this way: work brings a profit, but mere talk leads to poverty. To put it in layman's terms, talk is cheap. Most people who have been properly socialized want to improve themselves in some way. Anybody with half a brain would want to improve themselves somewhat. But if all they ever do is simply talk about it, then it's just mere fantasy. Most people are too afraid that they will fail, and so they never try at all. They shy away from that which they aspire to be, and by consequence become a, quote, lazy and worthless servant, and become outcast in their own outer darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 25:26 and 30. To put it in terms of Sylvester Stallone's Rocky Balboa, one of my favorite movies, if you know what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying, you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. Seems like something our Heavenly Father might say to us out of tough love. How are we to truly benefit from our New Year's resolutions if all we do is daydream about them? I'll put it off till tomorrow as the folly of the fool. For the procrastinator, tomorrow never comes. If we are to achieve what God has set on our hearts and minds to do, then we must count the cost, as Jesus said, pray about it, come up with a plan of action. Then comes the most important part. We must act, because talk is cheap. And that alternative, ironically, is extremely costly. People want the up-and-coming year to be better, more productive, more successful, and so on. Or perhaps they don't care either way. But there are negative consequences that lie dormant until in the final phase of degeneration, the person is seized by the inevitable. But for most, they've seen their failures in the past in conflict with their dreams. So most people don't even try. They think that's not for me. There's no way I can improve. There's no way I can accomplish that goal, however attainable or however lofty. Or maybe we're just waiting for permission. If you're waiting for permission to do what God has put on your heart to do, then here it is. You have permission to better your life. You have permission granted the God-given talents to achieve that which you've resolved to do. Talk is cheap. And time is running out for all of us. So get to it. But perhaps, in order to achieve that which God has put on our hearts to accomplish, we must be brave and give no place to the enemy, who seeks to rob our future for a better life, physically, financially, mentally, and spiritually. Ephesians 4:27. We need vision, as I said last week, yes. But there must come a time where we must act, take risks, and leave the consequences up to God. He can handle them. There is a window of opportunity, a reprieve that God has allowed for in each of our lives. So strike while the iron is hot. For Noah, that meant build a boat. He had a window of opportunity for about 100 years. He got right on it. He believed God. God gave him the vision, and He gave him the instructions. For God preserved Noah, a preacher of righteousness, with 7 others when He brought a flood upon the world on the ungodly. 2 Peter 2:5. Noah had the conviction, foresight, and understanding to do what needed to be done. Really against all odds, against all criticism, against being the butt end of every joke for 100 years or so. He was criticized for 100 years while building a ship in the middle of the desert, hundreds if not thousands of miles away from any seaport. Sometimes the things we set our resolve to do seem foolish to the world while making perfect sense to us. We know what God has put on our hearts to do. The famous American violinist Isaac Stern was once approached by a middle-aged woman after one of his concerts. Enchanted by his stunning performance, she said, "I'd give my life to be able to play like that." Stern said back, I gave my life to be able to play like this." We all have a destiny to fulfill. And there will be roadblocks, there will be hurdles, there will be tragedies and triumphs along the way. But don't let yourself be distracted from what God has put on your heart to accomplish. If you know what you're worth, then go and get what you're worth. And don't be afraid to fail. God has given us various amounts of money, the same amount of time, many different gifts and talents according to our own personalities and temperaments. They are not ours merely to keep. They are ours to use as means of investment. Investment in our children and in our grandchildren. Investment in our husbands or our wives. Investment in our home economy. Investment in our church. They are not ours. God has entrusted them to us. Investment can be risky for sure, but you'll never know unless you try. They are given by Almighty God to use to make the world a better place, so to speak. We all should be striving to do better, to be better. There is risk and reward in labor. But I would say there is greater risk with no reward in laziness, cowardice, apathy, which really eventually devolves into nihilism. There are many Christians, so-called Christians, who walk around and by their own actions say to the world, "I'm a nihilist. I don't care about anybody or anyone, or even myself. Life has dealt me such a blow that they've fallen into resentment, and they can't seem to get past that. And they live in their own hell where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, unfortunately. And if that's you, there's good news. Today is a new day, and we're living in a new year. And God is calling us out of that and into a new day to take risks. He's given us permission to do so. That's really the highlight of the parable of the talents. The master entrusted the talents to his servants with the understanding that they would take risks and they might lose, but they might win. And he was willing to take that risk on himself, not his servants. And there was only one who chose not to take the risk. There are certain outcomes attributed to laziness that we should shy away from, and for good reason. Namely, we don't want the negative consequence of punishment or of being penalized. But what do we do instead? What does God expect of us instead? Why do we even care to work hard? What's the point? We work hard because there is hope of reward at the end. We believe that there is a God who has loaded us with various forms of talent that we are entrusted to steward. We hope to eat the fruits of our labor when we are good stewards of those gifts and talents. And we hope to be able to be fruitful and multiply in such a way that not only are we able to taste and see that the fruits of the Lord are good, but that others can taste and see, so that we can take those and give, so that we can increase and give and invest and grow God's economy. Mere fantasy, mere talk, is equivalent to taking our one talent and burying it in the desert. So what else is God to do when we fall into laziness and then take that talent, and then to take that talent away from us and to give it to someone more capable or responsible, or someone who has a better work ethic, so to speak? It's not really harsh when you think about it. It makes perfect sense. The beauty is we can take this warning to heart. This is the good news. It's the tough love of God, if you will. And we can use it to our advantage to redirect and to take on the challenge and say, yes, Lord. It's not too late to start fresh. In fact, it's the perfect time since it's a new year, 2020, the year of clarity. The Lord isn't really being slow about His promise, as some people think. No, He is patient for your sake. He does not want anyone to be destroyed, but He wants everyone to repent. Repent of what? Well, namely, what we're talking about here this morning. What Jesus was trying to get across 2,000 years ago. Even if it's a little bit. It doesn't have to be monumental. You don't have to make it in your mind something so grandiose that it's unattainable. Make it reasonable. What is God asking you to do? Start small. Is He asking you to give more to the church? Maybe you can't give 10% as is prescribed in Malachi 3:10, which is true tithing, by the way. Maybe all you can give is 1%. Maybe all you can give is $5, but start somewhere. Or maybe God's just asking you to be generous from your foundation. And you see, you've gone year after year, and God said, why don't you give a couple of bucks to that person? It might cheer them up, and you shied away from that. This is the year of change. This is the year that you can start to be more generous. Maybe your time is very precious to you, which it should be, because time is the one thing that none of us can get back. But it's the one thing that is an equal playing field for all of us. Each and every one of us has 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Are we using our time wisely? Or are we using it, are we letting time just drift by us? And with that, time as it drifts by, all of the opportunities are drifting along with it. And we could get up and be strong and courageous and take the energy that God has given us and maybe use it for good. Maybe use it to go out and help somebody in the community, or go and volunteer your time at a hospital, or pray for people. I don't know what it is God's asking you to do. I don't know. That's a question for you to answer. But what is it? What is it that you can stop doing, and what is it that you can start doing today? Nothing so outrageous that's, oh, I can never accomplish that. We'll start small. You don't read a book. You read a book one page at a time. One word a paragraph. One paragraph, 5 paragraphs a page. And you do it every single day, and eventually you get done with the book. And guess what? You're smarter for having done it, because you've used your time wisely to invest in yourself to be better. Why? To make your life better somehow. To make your family better somehow. And ipso facto, to make the world a better place. To do a good job at your job, not cut corners, but to really work as you're working unto God, not unto people. Well, I don't have energy. Maybe you need sleep. Put the phone down and go to sleep. It's simple, right? I mean, it's really as simple as that, you see. But it has to do with aligning our want with what God wants. It has to do with aligning our will with God's will. Getting in lockstep with God, and walking that proverbial narrow way that few find. It's no wonder that there are so many people who are unsuccessful in life, and there are very few people who are very successful in life. Why? It's the proverbial narrow road. We shouldn't be jealous of those people. We should be inspired by those people. And what are you doing different that I'm not doing? You eat a meal one bite at a time. You're not a snake that just eats it whole and digests for several months. No, you eat your meal one bite at a time. When you're a kid and your mom or your dad puts some food on, in front of you, you say, I don't want to eat that. Well, just eat a little bit, your parents would say, right? That's what my parents would say. That's what I say to my kids. Well, just eat a little bit. And see what you think, That's essentially what God is speaking to us today. Is like, just start small. Start somewhere. Make your life better. You're worth more. You're more valuable than you give yourself credit for. You need to wake up every morning and make positive affirmations over your life and say, I'm valuable. That's why so many people fall into resentment, because they don't see value within themselves. It seems to me that we're valuable enough that the King of the universe would step down from his throne and his riches and his glory in the form of a man named Jesus Christ. He thought that we were so valuable that he took it all the way to the cross. That's how valuable you are in the eyes of God. So take that and carry it with you if you don't find value in yourself this morning. Or if you struggle with depression. Or you struggle with a negative identity. But do something with your life. You're not just a rat on a wheel. You're a human being with purpose. So my question to you today is, what is it that God is asking you to stop doing? That's part one of question one. And part two of question one is, what is it that God is asking you to start doing? And a piggyback question is, are you brave enough to know the answer? Only those who are brave enough to know the answer will reap the reward of increase, because they will see it, they will take responsibility, and they will move forward. That's what happened to the two servants that were given 5 and 2 talents and then turned around and doubled their profit. They were brave and they stepped forward and gained increase. But only those who are brave enough to know the answer will reap the reward of increase, because they are not afraid to take the talents and risk losing them in some unfortunate investment. According to Jesus, at least the men who ended up with 10 and 4.5 or so talents took the risk, and it proved to be prosperous. They were brave. They were, as Joshua 1:9 says, strong and courageous. And I want to follow up my question with a challenge, and it's this. The challenge is, don't be cavalier about what God has placed on your heart to do. He wants good for you and for your family and for your neighbor and all who are in your sphere of influence. Don't be cavalier. Don't be afraid, because God will be with you. That's the truth of Scripture from Genesis to Revelation, because God is with us. That's what Emmanuel means. And don't lose heart when you fail, either. It doesn't make you a failure. It makes you someone who knows what doesn't work. It's a learning experience. Then breathe, redirect, and try a different approach. The alternative is to hide your talent in the desert, only to be met with weeping and gnashing of teeth. Something that no sane person wants to experience. All you have to do is take your talents and invest them where God is telling you to invest them in. And then trust Him with the outcome. He can handle it. If you'll do this, you'll not only reap double, but you'll hear from God. He'll say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master." Healing and wholeness, blessing and favor, all the promises of God. In Jesus' name, amen. And God bless you.